Right, hey guys, how we doing? Back another video from Clyde. Clyde is back on the uploads. Whoop whoop, let's get it. More Bleach content, let's go. So this one's called Why Aizen vs Squad Zero Isn't Close at All. Now, I've heard, down the grapevine, somewhere, that the anime has got anime-only moments with Squad Zero in. Some of them showing Bankai that we never saw in the manga, apparently. I'm still not quite up to date with the Bleach 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. I did read the manga, and Squad Zero didn't do a lot. So I think Kubo's making up for those mistakes. I feel like he was rushed at the time, but by having these anime-only moments, giving other characters time to shine when they didn't originally. And I think this is going to potentially touch on that. So I still, in my head, I'm like, Aizen would still win, but I haven't seen what has been shown, so I don't know how much more powerful Squad Zero has been portrayed to be than originally done in the manga. But I'm sure Clyde's going to explain all that. Maybe. I don't know. Let's get it. I still think Aizen's going to win, but let's see. Why Aizen versus Squad Zero isn't close at all. And I'm so glad to see Clyde back again. This is awesome. So cool.
So, Bleach power scaling just got pretty fucking insane.
Oh, okay. Cool. Is it that? It's that much of a game changer?
After Bleach episodes 25 and 26 of Core 2 of the 1000 Year Blood War, a lot of anime-only scenes were included into the invasion of the Soul Palace by series author Sensei Kubo.
Sick, so we are going into it. Cool. I think this is one of them, isn't it?
And it was so blatantly different that one of the characters said a line
Now that's what I'd expect to see at a Squad Zero fight. Cool.
which essentially stated to us viewers, yeah, the Zero Division were arse in the manga, especially after being hyped up to be above the Gote 13s.
Yeah, they were. It was like, whoa, they're so strong, and then, no.
So, we made a few changes. And oh boy, those changes were massive.
Cool.
Due to the overall negative reception of the handling of the Zero Division in the manga, Mr. Kubo and Studio Pierrot decided to add entirely new sequences to their fights that were not in the manga.
Oh, mate, I can't wait to see
With
these.
Shutada Senjumaru being the star of the show.
Cool.
Senjumaru describes that for the Zero Division to fight seriously, 3 of them must commit seppuku, as their powers are hidden with seals due to how devastating they could all be to the 3 worlds if they fought as a team.
What? Wow. That is mad.
Upon doing so, Senjumaru activates her Bankai.
What?
She states, even the
Slightest use of our powers would cause the heaven and earth of the 3 worlds to
slightest use of
tremble.
our powers would cause the heaven and earth of the 3 worlds to tremble. Interestingly, she uses the term Sangai instead of Sekai, specifically referring to the 3 main worlds or realms of Bleach. She specifies not just the planets themselves, but the realms is what's essentially being stated.
Whoa.
Now, if you were to look at the way that the heavens and earth is used in Hebrew, this encompasses everything. There was no specific word for universe in the Hebrew language. To them, if you wanted to say universe, you would say heavens and the earth.
So heavens and earth interprets as everything, yeah.
Everything that was made by God.
Wow.
Now, because of the fact that Senjumaru, Ichibei, and the other Zero Division members are actually very damn old, they use a lot of old-style language, and her using Sangai instead of Sekai could be more so referring to that kind of comparison, especially if you want to look at Bleach from more of a Buddhist perspective. This could definitely be more so referring to the universes inside of those
Editing's really good on this, by the way, as well. I've got to throw that out there.
realms and how she can shape those entire areas. Normally, I'd say this just means being able to devastate the planet or plane of existence these worlds are on, but she specifies the heavens and earth, which can be interpreted as the sky or, again, everything around those areas. The craziest part about that feat is that the anime just blatantly showcases what she said happening directly after.
Oh, right, cool. So it's not just like she just said it.
And this is only the slightest release of their power, which she does
sick.
specify that only a slight amount of their power can do something like this. That's the main part which I see a lot of people skimming over, is they think this is like the peak of their power, when again it's not. She just said that's what they can casually do when they release Bankai.
Right.
The point of the seals is to show that if they were to go all out, characters at this level could ravage the 3 worlds or 3 realms.
Whoa.
And also keep in mind, this is just the power of one singular Zero Division member going
Oh, God, yeah.
Bankai. Imagine if they all released at the same time. Once Core 3 begins, they're no doubt going to add a lot more stuff to Ichibei's fight, because when
I am so catching up so quick to this then. Oh my god.
He transforms into Bankai. It doesn't actually shake all the realms, but I don't think it always needs to be shown for them to be able to do these things, because it's kind of like the Aizen feat with the mountain situation where people are like, oh, well, isn't that like, you know, as strong as he is? He sort of said it in the manga, but the issue is that characters far weaker than him are stated to be able to do much more. So you just assume, well, of course, Aizen is far superior to stuff like that. He was just also fascinated by the fact that he could not just destroy mountains, but make them vanish from existence with casual swings of his sword, which again is not really a bad thing, but you just got to assume, well, of course, that's not the peak of his power.
No.
Since those changes, a lot of debate was instantly on the rise in regards to Aizen versus the Zero Division. As we all know, for him to reach the Soul King, he was going to have to fight them at some stage. In many of the data books, there are various statements which confirm that he would have achieved his goals if he was to have gotten past Ichigo, along with 2 official Bleach volume covers which verbatim state that Aizen would have succeeded again.
Plot. Wow.
But Ichigo was the only thing stopping him. Though I've already talked about this subject before in an older video, I really felt it was necessary to delay my videos that I was working on so that I could defend Aizen from what is genuinely slander of his name, and to clarify just how strong not only Senjumaru is, but along with that, show you guys that Aizen is pretty damn underrated, and I think that many people forget just what he can do. Yes, the Zero Division...
Aizen's a beast! We never saw his Bankai, man. That's something they need to throw in the anime.
Has been portrayed in a much more powerful light than they were in the manga, and by doing such, this has actually improved the scaling across the whole series for any character which is in their tier of power. However, once again, as I've already hinted at, it doesn't actually affect the outcome of Aizen's plans like many think, because of what was shown. A very few pertinent things that need to be considered when talking about Aizen's strength is that there are many different variations
God, the editing's so sick on this.
of him. In the Soul Society arc, Ichigo perceives him as so strong that he appears inconceivably strong compared to a captain. Aizen himself even remarks that, at this stage in time too, he can't even wield the entire power of the Kurohitsugi. When perfecting the control of the Hogyoku, he is stated to have spiritual pressure compared to multiple captains. Though the captains struggle with all of the Espada, Aizen is stated to be so strong that he could defeat all of them without his Kyokusui.
Yeah, it's just his strength. Yeah, I remember reading that. It's just his pure strength.
Getsu, just his pure speed and power, with Gin also remarking in his own head that Aizen's powers are far beyond any precautions. In just his Shikai, Aizen believes he could fight Yamamoto to the death and
that's one hell of a feat.
Potentially win, Yamamoto being the one who wields the most destructive Zanpakuto of all time. Some might say in retort to that, well, Aizen is considering that he's going to fuse with the Hogyoku and become so strong that even he doesn't know. But the truth of the matter is he doesn't actually know how that's going to go, so he's making the statement based on what's happening in front of him, not what could happen in the future. He doesn't know the full extent of how strong he's going to be, and that's why he is continuously surprised after every time that he transforms.
He's like, oh right, this is how strong I am. Oh wow, I've got so much potential. Go me!
You can see that Aizen can survive a Kido at point-blank range from Yamamoto, which was used in a last-ditch effort to stop Aizen. By doing so, Yamamoto lost one of his arms, and this would inevitably be one of the reasons for his downfall later on. This also shows us that he put everything into that final attack. As Aizen fuses with the Hogyoku, he starts to surpass the powers of Hollow and Shinigami, becoming a transcendent being.
Looks dead weird with the mask on, but looks pretty cool with the face like that. I like
in his own words, surpassing everyone.
Everyone. Did you read that? Everyone.
He claims that he has reached the absolute peak of what a Shinigami can do before breaking this barrier. Prior to this, the only 2 individuals that Aizen had respect for in regards to their skills were Yamamoto in power and Urahara in intellect. As he begins to transform multiple times, he becomes undetectable by all beings that he runs into. Characters like Urahara, Yoruichi, and Isshin cannot sense his power.
Crazy.
With a mere glance, he is able to destroy the Cleaner, which governs time itself. Gin believes it's impossible.
But that gives Ichigo the time to trade.
Stop this thing, but Aizen isn't phased at all. We later see that Gin hitting him off guard isn't enough, and Aizen transforms once more, blitzing him from across the city. Merely touching the area near Aizen actually injures Gin's arm, showing us that even high-tier captain prodigies, such as himself, can be harmed by his spiritual pressure. Aizen then runs
R.I.P. Gin. R.I.P.
into Dongai Ichigo, a form of Ichigo which to this day is debatably the strongest variation of Ichigo due to how obscure his training was and how he goes from below Shikai Aizen in power to beyond the comprehension of Alien Aizen, which is his 4th form. The data books describe both of them as higher dimensional entities, with words like God being time after time associated with Aizen's new level of power. This Ichigo forces Aizen to transform once more into a form which is far beyond any of the Gotei 13 and is so powerful it takes Ichigo's power sacrificing 4 or 5D, strongest thing in the Bleach universe, attack, long-haired deity form to stop Aizen.
Yeah, like literally just everything he has.
There is a page from Bleach Databook.
And then he's still not dead after that, like he's still there, and then it takes Urahara to like seal him, and then it's like, whoa, and then he's got to get strapped in that chair for like how many years? And then he's one eye, and then when he's strapped in, I remember in the manga, just with that one eye, he brings down the blood. Oh my god.
Unmasked, which verbatim states that Ichigo's Mugetsu is the most powerful thing at that time in the story. And Aizen still comes back, then describes how he's about to transform once more, but Urahara's seal activates while his spiritual pressure is still recovering from being atomized by the Mugetsu. If we take what Aizen says at face value, even him being hit by an attack, which is on a different dimensional plane of power than he is, that still wasn't enough to kill him, and he could still regenerate his entire body back. Fast forward to the war arc, and the anime gives us an interaction between Aizen and Yhwach, where Yhwach admits that killing Aizen would be next to impossible. Even the idea of restraining him wouldn't work because the Hogyoku is such a nuisance. Aizen, interestingly, recognizes Yamamoto's Bankai spiritual pressure to be, quote, unpleasant, which is intriguing due to the fact that this is the strongest iteration of Aizen thus far, and Yamamoto was not at his full power due to his missing arm, and was also holding back his Bankai's power from destroying the Soul Society. It's actually possible that we may have seen a scene where he was able to shake everything similar to what the Zero Division members did, but because he was suppressing himself so hard and wasn't at full power, we never got to see the full extent of what he could do. Sasuke Aizen, unlike all of the Zero Division, apart from Ichibei, is listed as a special war threat by Yhwach. Yhwach considered listing Yamamoto above the other 4 Zero Division members, but his missing arm was the main issue. Yhwach does also state that only he could seal Yamamoto's sword, which could imply that Yamamoto truly was nerfed far beyond what we initially thought. Some like to state that the only reason this was said by Yhwach is because his Royal Guard were nerfed to a pretty large extent at that exact stage. However, if that's
the hand one, isn't it? Weird.
The case, what Yhwach could have done is just powered up the miracle temporarily, sent him in to go battle Yamamoto, and then he could have sealed Yamamoto's Bankai. The way Yhwach speaks about Yamamoto and his full power is always in a very complimentary manner. He's very disappointed that he can't fight Yamamoto at his full power, and even states it to his dead body while stepping on his head. For comparison's sake too, to give you guys a bit of perspective on how strong Yamamoto in his full power should be if he was to have both arms, well, we do know that even one-arm Yamamoto was stronger than Shunsui, and he's the one that fights Lilibara later on and does defeat him. Sure, he does have outside help.
Oh, I hope they do something else with that goddamn sword, like.
But Yamamoto, even with one arm, is so much stronger than Shunsui that it wouldn't really make a difference when it comes to this argument. An interesting little detail which I want you guys to pay attention to is that the Zero Division members don't seem to be showcased having transcendent spiritual pressure,
besides this ball,
whereas Yamamoto in Yoshikai actually does. Along with that, his Bankai was hyped up by basically every single character that was aware of it or seen it in battle. Again, going back to the fact that if he's got both arms and he isn't holding back, he might be a lot stronger than people actually realize. Ichibei even goes out of his way to stop Yhwach from being able to wield Yamamoto's Bankai by covering it with his ink. It should also be noted, and I don't say this to downplay Senjumaru or any of the Zero Division members in any way, so don't take this the wrong way, but Yhwach does not even acknowledge her Bankai being released. He just continues to fight Ichibei. Interestingly, Yhwach not only underestimates Aizen's power, but is caught under his Kyoku.
So the whole shaking and everything, and it's just like,
Soigetsu from just their brief interaction. It's possible Aizen was tricking Yhwach into misinterpreting his power to be lower than it was too, because he was even able to mess with his sense of time. Along with that, how is Yhwach going to know the full extent of Aizen's powers when, for one, he hasn't actually seen it in battle at this stage, and two, Aizen has seals all over his body which are restricting his power from being sensed correctly. When Urahara witnesses Aizen's power later on, he believes that he may be stronger than when he fought Ichigo, and this is a Yhwach that had just finished the Zero Division, absorbed the Mimihagi, the Soul King, and had already finished wiping his ass with Horn of Salvation Ichigo. Aizen, while once again having multiple seals on his body, is able to compete with this Yhwach in combat, and has hypnosis strong enough to affect him. meaning that if Aizen had casted this on the Zero Division members, they would have lost the fight before it had even begun.
Okay, cool. So Aizen still got
Something
this.
very tricky about
I thought as much.
fighting Aizen is that he has completely fused with his Zanpakuto, so by glancing at any part of his body, you can become affected by Kyoka Suigetsu.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There are also no arguments to make that the Zero Division members can break the Kyoka Suigetsu because it is able to affect this version of Yhwach, which you can see on the screen, who possesses power that is far beyond all of them combined. Aizen even claims that with just his spiritual pressure while sealed to the chair, he can bring down...
That's it. That was so cool. That was so freaking cool. I was sitting here, I just shoot down for
his
it.
Soul Palace. The fact that Urahara can't actually prove if Aizen is or isn't stronger than when he fought Ichigo means that he may have possessed power comparable to Yhwach all the way back then. At the very least, we do know that he would be above Pre-Almighty Yhwach, and Pre-Almighty Yhwach already in one-on-one combat would be able to battle all of these Zero Division members except Ichibei to the death. And this isn't inconsistent at all whatsoever in the series, because Ichigo and Aizen were incredibly powerful when they went through all of their transformations in their battle.
Oh yeah.
They weren't just above the captains in power, they were 5 to 6 echelons of power above them. And the Mugetsu had such a huge increase in power for Ichigo that you can't even quantify what the multiplier would technically be. One thing we do know for certain is that Aizen, at the very bare minimum, was more powerful than pre-Almighty Yhwach, and that Yhwach is only contested in combat by Ichibei. Later on in the story, Gotei 13 Shinigami are able to defeat his Royal Guard, who defeat the Zero Division quite quickly in the manga. We're yet to see how it turns out in the anime, but it's basically going to be the same thing. Likely the situation is going to be that Uryu or Hushvolt get them out of her Bankai and defeat her, because if the other members reveal their Vollständigs, well, it kind of ruins the point of revealing them in individual battles later on in the story, which is meant to be a big deal. Even being comparable to Yhwach before his power-ups would be very impressive, because it took the combined efforts of all of the old Gotei 13, which were famous for being more ruthless in combat, and a younger, angrier, two-armed Yamamoto to stop him in the past. Again, it took all of them just to defeat Yhwach. Make sure to consider that Yamamoto was someone that both Yhwach and Aizen had tremendous amounts of respect for when it came to his strength. We've never truly seen him at full power because he's always been nerfed in one way or another in all of his fights. You must keep in mind that any feat which the Zero Division gets added to their arsenal due to the anime, all inadvertently buff Aizen's scaling, because
It's an okay.
He is comparable to a form of Yhwach that surpasses them all.
Wow. Okay, yeah, this is a very interesting take. I like it. So make the Zero Division stronger. Makes Aizen more powerful in the scaling aspect. Wow.
And if Urahara can't actually make up his mind about whether or not Aizen did get stronger, or he just happened to actually be that strong during the battle with Ichigo, then it doesn't look very good for the Zero Division. I should also say that just because Ichigo and Aizen didn't shake all the 3 realms, doesn't mean that they can't do it. Example being, Ukiura said that if he was to release below the canopy of Lost Noches, he could destroy Lost Noches. Yami released below the canopy of Lost Noches, and we know that he was secretly the strongest, if not arguably, second, third.
Yeah.
He didn't destroy Lost Noches. Does that mean that he can't do it? Nope. It just means that he was either 1, controlling his power correctly, or 2, for the sake of the story's continuity, Mr. Kubo can't exactly have the characters just all the time destroying everything, can they?
No.
We know that when we watch Dragon Ball Z, these characters can easily blow up planets.
But they don't.
But the reason they don't is because of the continuity of the story and the fact that they can control their powers. Even if the Zero Division, by sheer luck, were able to hurt Aizen, the Hogyoku, which Yhwach conceded would be a pain to deal with, would transform Aizen over and over
again,
as long as he wills it. It also contains nails from the Soul King, so it could easily have authority over Ichibei's ink if it were to somehow be an issue. Yhwach multiple times was able to reject the powers of his ink, so I don't think it's impossible for Aizen, especially when he has a tool which wasn't even destroyed by the Mugetsu. You've also got to consider that Aizen would have no mental barrier against the Zero Division, like he did during his battle with Ichigo. Thus, would use the Hogyoku to its full extent. You could also make a hypothetical
Yo, that looks so sick.
scenario where Aizen goes into Bankai because he himself claims that he's already hit the peak of what a Shinigami can do, so by default he has always had one. I think if anyone's going to have a Bankai, to assume that Aizen wouldn't would just be retarded.
Yeah, that'd be ridiculous. Why would Aizen not have a Bankai of all people that exist within the world, the universe of Bleach? Why would he not have a Bankai? Show us in the anime, Kubo. Do it.
Because his whole goal was to get as strong as possible. So why would he just not have an interest in Bankai? Once activated, this could amplify his spiritual pressure by 5 to 10 times and give him access to a Hack's ability that we don't even know what it is. Just remember this, guys. Transcendent spiritual pressure is not a form. It's a level of power, so his Bankai would be stronger than it would have been if he was to, say, hypothetically activated it in the Soul Society arc. It's the same reason why when he cast the Kurohitsugi, he clarifies this is even stronger because it's being used by a transcendent being. That's also the same reason why Yamamoto's Bankai appears to be invisible to Hushwolf and Yhwach until he reveals it to them, because the transcendent spiritual pressure is making the flames actually act different. Keep in mind too that it's actually confirmed that Aizen cannot be executed by anything in the Soul Society, as he is regarded as an immortal being. Therefore, instead of being executed by, say, the Sokyoku, which has the ability to overwhelm everything in existence, well, he's just placed in jail instead for a pretty long length of time, to say the least. It's rather fascinating that when the Zero Division speak about Aizen, they always talk about him in a sort of way where he's regarded as evil, like even more so of a mental threat to them than actually Yhwach was. So I always found that to be quite fascinating, because Ichibei is always very dismissive of Yhwach in sort of an elder way. He says many a times, like, go away, go think about what you did, stuff like that. It's really dismissive of Yhwach, but when they speak about Aizen, it's always like a, don't say his name too loud, you know, he's very scary. So I feel like the fact that he's regarded as such a threat in their minds mentally, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
You'll also remember that when Yamamoto heard that Yhwach had visited Aizen in the Mugen, he was very terrified at the idea of those two teaming up. And interesting.
Could you imagine? Like, no, I can't. I just can't. I can't deal with that again. And I'm gonna Aizen out again. Please no.
The difference between Yamamoto's destroying the Soul Society feat and what Senjumaru does is that, yes, what Senjumaru does is only a slight showing of their power, and that's something that many people do continuously keep forgetting. It's not actually the peak of what they can do. This is just a slight showing. Well, Yamamoto does have the ability to, just by standing there while suppressing himself, which is a good feat like Senjumaru's, where it's not even the full example of their full power. Just from him standing there and suppressing himself in Bankai, he has the ability to threaten the entire Soul Society. Like, we're not just talking shake the area, he's gonna eviscerate it with his flames passively again while suppressing himself. I should also hammer in that it's kind of an oxymoron to say that he has the time and time again strongest Zanpakuto, the most destructive Zanpakuto, but he's weaker than like 7 other Shinigami. It's a bit silly. Also, earlier in the series, just to add a bit more credit to how strong Aizen is, even in just Shikai, Unohana concedes to Aizen's power and essentially says that Ichigo is the only one capable of dealing with him. Now, this is also very interesting because a lot of people always make the conversation of, well, what if the Zero Division just overpower Aizen with spiritual pressure? They could surely just overpower the Kyoko Soigetsu, right? But Unohana sort of, yeah, she should be stronger than Aizen as the Kenpachi, which I don't believe she is, but let's just say for the sake of argument, okay, we just believe she is. Even she's like, well, even if I had spiritual pressure that was higher than his, he'd still have me in checkmate. Yeah. So just more supporting evidence that even if you are more powerful than the individual, being Aizen specifically, you can't just break out of his Kyoko Soigetsu. Another example of that was the fact that for Yamamoto to combat the Kyoko Soigetsu, he had to actually bait Aizen into stabbing him so he could physically grab him, so because in his mind he believed, if I let Aizen stab me, I'll know that it's his specific spiritual pressure stabbing me and not someone else's. So that's the way that he was able to combat it. But because this hypothetical fight is going to take place after that, Aizen's not going to make the same mistake again. Now, you guys know that I don't always like to use the novels because the novels tend to have a lot of stuff where I'm actually quite curious on how heavily involved Kubo is. But for the sake of argument, if we do say that the novels are all canon and we have to treat all the writing in there as purely...
Okay, hypothetically, okay, yes, we'll take this in, yes.
You know, source material that can be used, and once again, canon. There's a lot of statements which always refer to Yamamoto and Aizen in particular being on a different level of power compared to a lot of the other captains and just the general characters. Now, of course, characters like the Soul King or any of these higher god-type figures, I guess you could say, like, yeah, they're a different conversation, but Shunsui even just blatantly refers to Yamamoto's power as being super strong, and Tokunada is essentially referred to as weaker than Aizen. There's also another interesting thing to add to what I sort of said a little earlier, and that's that, let's just look at this. This is really blatant. So we know for a fact that Shikai Aizen has superior spiritual pressure to all of the Espada, even if they were to fight him at the same time.
Yes.
Interestingly, he doesn't destroy Los Noches just from walking around.
Yes.
Because characters aren't shown physically doing certain things
Doesn't mean they can't
doesn't
do
mean
it.
that they can't do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Now, there are also arguments that people make where they say, well, Nimaya and Ichibei could just overrule Aizen's Zanpakuto because they have authority over the swords. They're the ones who create and name the blades. Well, the issue is that Aizen's spiritual pressure is so superior to theirs that he could literally just say, no, you're not having it.
He just literally just goes, nah, fam. And then it doesn't happen.
Along with that, the Hogyoku might be able to give Aizen an ability where he wills into existence that his authority over his own Zanpakuto has more importance than they do, regardless of whether or not they made the sword itself. The biggest issue that these Zero Division members are going to have if they face Aizen is the second they make eye contact with him, it is G.
Yeah, that does.
The Zero Division having the capability to literally shake all realms and even the heavens really adds consistency to the fact that the Sokyoku can overwhelm everything in existence, which Ichigo blocked in a very weak iteration of himself. Yamamoto can passively destroy the Soul Society while holding back his power, which might actually include not just the planet or city or area that you can visibly see in the manga, but the actual plane which their world is on, because a lot of people do like to debate, is the Soul Society on a planet like Earth, but obviously in a different realm, or is it on a flat plane which just goes on forever? Because the way that it's depicted in the anime, it's actually quite possible that it's not a planet, it's more of like a flat area that just goes on forever. And this also does
like a flat Earth.
Does go consistently with Vasto Lorde Ichigo scaling from the movie Hellverse, where he covers multiple layers of hell with a Seto and almost destroys Earth in collateral damage. Even all the way back to the start of the Oranka arc, Shinji warns Ichigo that his power can echo across the entire planet and alert Hollows to their whereabouts. That's just in his dollar store Shikai form. Senjumaru's powers also don't stop there. You could consistently make some very solid arguments that her powers aren't just impressive in regards to destructive capability, but how her powers correlate with enlightenment and heavy Buddhist influence, which I referenced earlier in the video. I'm not going to act like I'm an expert on this subject matter, but anyone who follows Bleach's story beyond just the surface level knows that the story is heavily influenced by Buddhism, and even the cycle of life and death in Bleach's lore mechanically works in a similar fashion. Not only does her Bankai's name hold incredible significance, but Mr. Kubo went out of his way to add this as new canon material for us to see, along with directly asking Studio Pierrot to show the Zero Division being able to shake the three realms.
Right, so he asked them to...
In short, the author wanted us to see these new feats.
That's so cool. That's awesome. I love that he's actually involved.
If you notice in the anime, Senjumaru's Bankai shows us slight glimpses of her weaving the visual fates of her foes, and how some of their inevitable downfalls will take place. This has kind of a similar showing to Higuruma's Shikigami Judgeman from Jujutsu Kaisen. If you're familiar with that series, then you'll know what I'm about to say, where Higuruma does not have knowledge of his opponent's crimes, his Shikigami does, even if they're a complete stranger. In Senjumaru's case, although she isn't seeing what the future beholds, like say the Almighty, she is weaving their fates in a symbolistic manner, sort of a similar regard where Judgeman has preemptive knowledge of things, even though the user, which would be Senjumaru in this case, doesn't actually have the knowledge of what these events really mean. Lilybara with the self-inflicted wounds, Pineda sinking into nerveless sand, a complete counter to him, the Miracle being frozen, unable to move, Askanaklivar crushed by lifeless steel or metal, Hushvolth is consumed by Basby's flames or maybe even the fear of Yamamoto's, Uryu falls to his knees as he looks at the Quincy insignia, a slave to his uncertain role in the future and his identity crisis with the Quincy.
Cool.
Though again, the woven fates shown are not showcased in the same nature as the Almighty, due to how they're not entirely accurate, it does also at the very least reveal their biggest weaknesses too, be that physical or mental. Hikifune mentions, Senjumaru has 1,000 arms, a clear reference to the Guanyin Bodhisattva, Guanyin translating to the one who perceives the sound of the world, which directly correlates with the ability to weave fate itself. Senjumara also has 6 arms and 6 parts to her Bankai, 1 for each victim, the 6 realms of Samsara. Her Bankai upon release summons a traditional Torigate, which is usually at the front of Buddhist shrines. Torigates usually mark the entrance into a sacred or spiritual place.
We're getting educated here, boys. Love it.
The reason that's important is because what that might imply is that once the Bankai is released, they get transported into a different realm inside the actual Bankai itself or a different sort of area. It's really up to how you interpret it because we weren't actually explained how it
looks beautiful. The animation
works, but pretty cool that that's a little addition to the Bankai's reveal. I'd also like to include that because of the fact that her battle and Yhwach versus Ichibei hasn't actually concluded in the anime, it ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. The next episode could reveal even further feats for her, so please keep that in mind. Along with this,
I am so going to catch up before third call.
If you genuinely give Senjumara complete charity and her Buddhist inspiration is taken as hyperliteral, shaking just the 3 realms is nothing in comparison to what Mr. Kubo might have been trying to convey to us readers and watchers. As we all know, Bleach fights are a battle of spiritual pressure, and Aizen was listed by Yhwach to have superior spiritual pressure than all of the Zero Division members before they faced off at the end of the war. Hidden within the shadows, Yhwach had already made the evaluation that during Aizen's battle with Ichigo, he posed a threat far greater than the Zero Division did. When Ichigo was battling Aizen, he could feel the loneliness from his blade, but this was the same Aizen that was aware that he was going to inevitably face off with the Zero Division and potentially the Soul King. It kind of makes you think that in Aizen's head, he'd already perceived his new powers as being far beyond that of what the Zero Division were going to be. I just want to point this out really clearly one more time. Yhwach had already placed Aizen in a category that was above Ichibei and the other Zero Division members. He put emphasis on the fact that his spiritual pressure was so high that it was special to him as a war potential. This is also the same Aizen who, at the start of the war arc, Yhwach didn't consider him to be part of the Shinigami side. He was just such a potential future threat that he recognized Aizen as having better spiritual pressure than even Ichibei.
Yo, yeah, he already knows. He already knows.
And as shown throughout the entire series, if you have higher spiritual pressure, you are superior in battle. The final point that I'd like to make about Kyokusui Getsu and just how overpowered it is, well, if you consider that Aizen was able to manipulate all possible futures that Yhwach could perceive and Yhwach was a threat to the entire universe, Aizen's got hypnosis, which scales to a character that has universal spiritual pressure. And if there are countless futures which he can see into, and Aizen can manipulate all of those, there was never a chance that they were going to break out of the Kyokusui Getsu. Since Aizen and Yhwach's meeting in the Muken, Aizen had Yhwach in checkmate. Now, I really wanted to add these final lines into the video so that if anyone has any issues, it can be clarified here. Point 1. Early in the video, I showcased the notorious mountain feat. Obviously, I know Aizen didn't actually cut the mountain. We found out it was Ichigo swings the entire time. The point of this being broken down is that even if he was correct in his evaluation of his own power, and Aizen did make the mountain vanish, it wouldn't actually be an anti-feat, as shown with even Grimjar being able to destroy Los Noches with a Gron Rei Sera in base form. Even Halibal and her Fraction, they basically look ahead and they're just like, why the f did he do that? That's a far larger area than that mountain, by the way.
Yes.
Pretty obvious.
Obviously.
And he was going to do that with just a simple Gron Rei Sera
and
in base
Aizen's
form.
obviously.
If you use the Resurrection multipliers for the higher ranked Espada, which is the ones that Ukiura directly references in the whole, don't release below the canopy, they're all weaker than base Aizen, and you can calculate them to have a much larger destructive capability. Example, we've all seen Ukiura's Lanza del Relampago, and that thing dwarfed Los Noches in size.
Yeah.
By the way, Los Noches might low-key be a pocket dimension because on the inside it has an artificial sun and it looks a lot larger on the inside than it does from the outside, that's for sure. Like when Rukia gets thrown to the ground by Yami, the amount of distance that thing
It's a long time.
stretches on for on the inside is much, much bigger than it looks. Aizen also, during his battle with Ichigo, where the infamous mountain statement is actually made in the anime and manga, he basically creates a Grand Canyon with one of his swings towards Ichigo, which is a far superior feat than just simply destroying a mountain. Point 2. How can Urahara be a reliable narrator in regards to Aizen's strength when he couldn't even sense Aizen's first form with the Hogyoku?
Oh yeah, how's he meant to judge how powerful he is if he can't even sense how powerful he is?
Once again proving the Yhwach scaling Aizen theory, that the Aizen who fought Ichigo may be far stronger than we think. Yhwach also references that specific fight in his fight with Aizen. Do we also know if Urahara even seen every single part of Ichigo's battle with Aizen? Even if Urahara was present, he wouldn't have been able to sense them in their battle, or even perceive their movements because of how superior they both were in strength to him. Urahara is so shocked by Aizen's power while sitting in the chair that this is his first assumption. The fact that he isn't 100% sure is proof of two things. Mr. Kubo wants us to know that Aizen got stronger, so he uses Urahara as a character to convey that with dialogue, or the other, Urahara thinks that the Aizen from the Ichigo battle was just that impressive, hence using Mei. I also want to really stress this to you guys. Alien Aizen and War Aizen are in a completely different echelon of power. They're in a whole different category than the Silver Surfer half-transformed Aizen, which was already casually beating Yoruichi, Isshin, and Urahara at the same time, and they also could not sense his power. Added to that, Aizen the entire time was messing with them, and when he flexed his power, beat them in singular strikes. I also wasn't trying to say earlier in the video that Aizen was the one that actually destroyed the mountain. The point was that even if he thought he did, it's still not an anti-feat. It was more about describing the mindset of Aizen and why that was pertinent to the video. Point 3, I would not like to die on the hill that the Soul Society is flat because there's too much evidence to show that it's a planet like Earth. However, if Ichigo was to have flown at full speed for such a long time from the Soul Palace, the Soul Society and the distance between these two areas could be calced to some ridiculously large areas. I mentioned a flat, endless plane, as I am not opposed to this theory. Sadly though, many misinterpret how big the Soul Society is, and we've seen this quite a lot when it comes to the Yamamoto stuff, where people will very casually call it universal, where now we have more evidence that it might actually lean towards that because of how he scales above and around the Zero Division members, depending on how you argue the power scaling. But I've seen too many people think that the Soul Society is the universe when we know for a fact that there are stars in the sky, so it's got its own space around the area where the Soul Society is located, and it's got planets, etc, etc. You know, it's kind of obvious what I'm trying to say here. It's a little weird to say that the Soul Society is just by default universal, just because we know that it's actually on a planet, which is similar to Earth. Point 4. I'm not opposed to Ichibei having transcendent spiritual pressure. It would actually make a lot of sense for the story if he does, because for him to be below Shikai Yamamoto, who we know has transcendent spiritual pressure in just his Shikai form, that'd be really weird. Yeah. Yhwach also reacts in a very interesting way, where he looks at his blade transform into a brush and he can't track it. I always interpreted that as him having transcendent spiritual pressure when I first read the manga. My main contention was that we don't know if the other members of the Zero Division have transcendent spiritual pressure, and even if they did, not all transcendent spiritual pressure is relative to one another. Like, you can break the barrier between Hollow and Shinigami and then become transcendent, right? But just like Shikai to Bonkai with Yamamoto is stronger and weaker than one another, the same is shown with Aizen when it comes to his first forms with the Hogyoku, then his alien form, then his war form. It would simply, once again, just come down to who has the superior spiritual pressure, but instead of that, it's who has the superior transcendent spiritual pressure. Point 5. Even if the Zero Division were to all use their Bankai at the same time on Aizen, we don't know what the abilities are, so if I was to say anything in regards to that, it would just be simply conjecture. And if they are under Kyoka Soigetsu, which they will be from the start of the battle, they'll never be able to locate him anyway. The situation would be quite similar to what he did to the Go T13 in Karakura Town, but potentially worse due to how high his spiritual pressure is. Hope you all enjoyed this video. A like and subscribe would be very much appreciated if you want more stuff like this from me. I do have videos in the works, but I sort of delayed them because I felt like this was more necessary to speak about. It's quite a big deal, and I hope that we see more stuff like this in the anime, which I know for a fact that we will. Aizen's going to get a lot of extra scenes added to the anime.
Oh, mate, I hope so. I want to see that. Yeah, I'm catching up. I am catching up so quick.
Yhwach's going to do some crazy stuff. Ichigo's going to do some wild stuff. Like, that doesn't even need to be said. The next two cores of the Bleach anime are probably going to make this series pretty damn strong. The last thing I want to say, the Aizen downplay has got to fucking stop.
Love it. Oh, that was boss. That was so good. The editing was great. The info was great. The arguments for both sides being put forward. The points at the end. Mate, that's cool. It was cool to see Clyde back. Love to see that. Love to see Clyde back on the uploads. Bleach stuff. You've made me want to just get into it now. Oh, mate. I've been putting it off for far too long. Class. Aizen is a beast. Always has been. Always will be. And I hope they do extras. I hope they do. I think everything I see on Twitter is just like, give Aizen his Bankai or show us Aizen's Bankai in the anime. But yeah, make sure you check out my Etsy shop. Go buy my t-shirt that I've designed. I love it. It's boss. It's nice. Supports me. And also, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video I upload, link is in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is our support channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys very much for that. And thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe. You haven't really leave comments below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. See you guys, all you guys, next time.